everyone. I'm Mihir Mathur. I am from India, New Delhi, and I run a research and consulting firm on applied systems thinking and system dynamics modeling. This work I'm going to share is in reference to my own learning after doing close to 30 plus projects on applied systems thinking. What made me write this piece, I wrote this on an airplane coming back from a workshop that I did for an organization. There's a buzz on systems thinking going around, at least in the place where I live. And more organizations want to apply systems thinking. But what I observed was after applying systems thinking, people are enlightened, they get amazing insights, and they have a lot of questions. But then they are left high and dry about what to do next after they have had those realizations. And I've been searching for that answer. And one of the answers I feel lies in system dynamics. And that's why I have this title of this presentation, Systems Thinking Makes You Wise, System Dynamics Helps You Test Your Wisdom. And I'll show an example to bring home this point. The purpose was to test the assumption that systems dynamics helps answer specific questions that arise after an application of systems thinking. So in my experience, systems thinking helps me ask the right questions. That's more than 50% of problem solving. But then we should move towards system dynamics to test some of the interventions and seek some answers. The case in point is that of domestic violence. We had done a workshop for a philanthropy, and they came up with an interesting dynamic hypothesis. They said that the funding and the number of projects for solving domestic violence has gone up over time. But along with that, the instances of domestic violence have also increased. Or maybe they have flattened, but they have definitely not reduced. And that's a bit of a counterintuitive outcome. You're doing more efforts, you're putting more money, but you're not getting the desired results. Why so? So we did a group model building workshop with 12 organizations who have been engaged in this work. And this is one of the parts of the larger diagram. We had around 14 loops. I'm presenting 2 loops showing a smaller story. The story is that women's independence is low, so agencies intervene. And through the intervention, like literacy, providing livelihood, rehabilitation, the women's independence increases. As women's independence increases, they begin to challenge the patriarchal power over time. As they challenge the patriarchal power, the men's insecurity in the system increases. As males feel more insecure, they create a pushback onto the system where they want to have more dominance and control over women. And that further reduces the women's independence in the system. As women's independence is further reduced, the agencies end up doing more projects and more interventions because there's a need for doing interventions. And that creates more empowerment. And as they challenge the patriarchal power, the male insecurity in the system further goes up, and there's a stronger pushback. So there are 2 balancing loops here, seeking 2 opposing goals. So the problem here is of competing goals. One goal, which is trying to increase the women's independence. The other goal of the other stakeholder is to maintain the status quo. And when we have 2 competing goals in a system, it often leads to escalation. So this is a kind of a system archetype called escalation or competing goals. This is what we discovered in the workshop. So this was a bit of an aha moment for all the participants. So a lot of questions were asked that should we then be engaging with the men in the system and not just the women, and how do we design the program and stuff like that. However, in my heart and in my mind, I was still not clear about what exact things should be done if we had reached to this new insight. So I set up a system dynamics simulation model using the 2 loops, and I started doing some concept model simulations using dummy numbers. And when I ran the simulation, I realized that actually women's independence is going up and down. It is an unstable system. There is instability in the system. At one place, the agency is trying to increase it. At the other place, the men in the system are trying to reduce it. So it's causing a oscillation in the system. It's instability. Instead of increasing your own goal, like doing more and more interventions, it would typically lead to more instability in the system. And that's what they were referring to, saying more projects, more interventions, but women's other instances of domestic violence are actually increasing, which says that system is becoming more unstable. So through policy experiments in the simulation model, what I realized is that you need to moderate the goals. You need to moderate the goals on both sides. You need to work with men to coach them, to also sensitize them towards allowing women to have their own agency. Whereas the intervention agency also needs to moderate their goals so that they don't want to change the system overnight. So there is a goal moderation on both sides that is required. And that brings little more stability in the system when you put that as an intervention into the model. So the run 2 that you see here, the red line, you see dampened oscillations, which means the system has become relatively more stable as compared to scenario 1. So doing this exercise, small exercise, gave me some interesting comparative results from systems thinking and system dynamics. What was the problem articulation that systems thinking helped us do? The problem was that of competing goals. The problem was not about women who are facing domestic violence. That's not the problem articulation. The problem articulation of competing goals. The interventions identified through the systems thinking exercise were include men in the program. But what do you do by including men into the program was not clear. When I set up a simulation model, it told me that we need to moderate the goals. We need to moderate the goals not just of men in the system, but also of the agency who's pushing too hard to bring about drastic changes. Expected results, we are expecting the indicator to improve in a linear fashion, but actually what we really need to do in the system is to reduce the pushback and thereby improve the stability in the systems. The program insight told us that we need to expand the scope to include men, but by doing system dynamics, the program insight was maybe we were seeking the wrong goal. The program's goal or program's expectation was a bit far-fetched. Intervention point, work with men, which is a very broad generic insight. But in system dynamics, what I learned by running the model is that we need to work with men to help them moderate their goals about women empowerment and agency of women, whereas the agency who's intervening also needs to moderate their own expectations about how much change can possibly come from 1 or 2 projects. So in conclusion, I say systems thinking helps you gain wisdom. System dynamics helps you test that wisdom to come to some more concrete findings. Thank you.